My stand-up career is taking off. I can feel it.
Sponsors are knocking on the door for this podcast.
For sure.
No, they're not.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going really good. How are you?
I'm good. You got any big Valentine's Day plans?
No. I made a reservation for us to go out and eat, my wife and I, but ever since we got married, we kind of don't do much for Valentine's Day.
I think the first year that we had the podcast, I think we even recorded on Valentine's Day one time. My wife and I have never made big deal out of Valentine's Day. I personally think it's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Anyways.
People ask me like, oh, what are you getting your wife? And I say nothing. And she doesn't want anything. And they always say, oh, that's a trick. She wants something.
Oh my God. I hate those shows.
This is our, sixth Valentine's Day together, I think. I'm pretty sure it's not a trick.
Yeah. I have to convince people as well that my wife really doesn't care about Valentine's Day. Like I tell them that and they're like, oh, I think there is a trick. I'm like, dude, we've been together for like 10 years now. I was like, I don't think it's a trick. I think she doesn't have a problem telling me when she's pissed at me. So I don't think that her not liking Valentine's Day is a trick. She's got me. She doesn't have to play the long con anymore. She's got it.
Yep, for sure. I don't know. I wouldn't say I ever got into the holiday, but I used to put more stock into it with ex-girlfriends and stuff when I was like in high school. And it's always my mom's birthday's on Valentine's Day. So I always kind of associated it with that. But in my older, more bitter age, it's just kind of like the definition of a greeting card holiday and
for sure.
Kind of horse shit. So
my thing is we celebrate our anniversary. Like I get off for
Valentine's Day.
Yeah. I realized as soon as I said it that wasn't necessarily the best turn of phrase or the best way to phrase that. But no, I try to get off work and I mean, we make a big deal out of the anniversary. So it's like we try to make a big deal out of the dates that actually matter. And for us, this date means literally nothing. So,
and this year it's on a Sunday. It's like, who's wanting to go do a bunch of shit on a Sunday?
No, we'll go grocery shopping.
Like I said, we're going to go out to eat and that's going to be the extent of it.
Cool, man.
All right. You ready to dive in?
Yeah. Our first segment, as always, is just kind of us checking in with each other. We call it what we're into. So what are you into this week, Tyler?
I have two quick brief things to talk about. The first is something that's a bit newer, and the other thing is something that I dragged my feet on a while and finally caught up on. The first one is, I think it came out this week. It's Triumph the Insult Comic Dog's election special. It's on Hulu Plus, presented by Funny or Die, I believe. I am not a political person at all. I don't like to talk politics. Anytime I see politics brought up on Facebook, I get pissed off. It's just, I don't know a lot about it, and people are so opinionated about it, and I don't think they for the most part know a lot about it either. So I kind of steer clear of that. And I don't really think political humor is that funny. I do, however, think Triumph the Insult Comic Dog is pretty hilarious. I've loved him since I was little and he was on Conan. I used to watch Conan all the time whenever I was a lot younger. And he was still doing the late show on NBC, and I love Triumph. And I still do. I think that I've outgrown him maybe a little bit, but the election special is actually pretty funny. You know, given the fact that I'm not the biggest political guy, like I was saying, you know, it doesn't come across as conservative. It doesn't come across as liberal. He kind of makes fun of everyone equally. I guess it could be argued that it probably is a little more liberal, I guess. I think most media is, but for the most part, I would say that he's pretty down the line, just makes fun of everybody. And there are quite a few funny bits in it. There's a part in the middle where it kind of lost me a little bit, where it had like this panel and a live studio audience. It kind of lost me there, but for the most parts where he's just dicking around with the candidates is pretty funny, especially Ted Cruz. There's this whole part of him chasing Ted's, like, he basically gets a tour bus to follow Ted Cruz's tour bus because Ted Cruz won't acknowledge him and won't give him an interview or anything. There's this part in the special where Ted Cruz is like signing a giant gun for someone.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I try to stay away from politics, but I did think that this special was pretty funny.
Yeah, I don't really like Triumph that much.
Yeah.
I can watch it in small doses, but for the most part, I'm not a huge fan. I think some of the stuff that he does, and I agree with you when you said that he kind of makes fun of everybody equally, and I appreciate that. It's just I don't think his humor is all that funny.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think it's basically a mouthpiece for Rob Smigel? Is that his name?
Something like that.
Yeah. I don't know if I got his first name right. I know his last name Smigel. It's basically a way for him to get his comedy out there because nobody wants to see him running around harassing people. It's funny coming from a puppet dog, but I think that he's really good on his feet as a comedian. You can tell some of the stuff he does is improvised, and I can appreciate that.
For sure.
The other thing I want to talk about really quick is old news, and I'm sure I'm the last person associated with this podcast, or even probably our listeners to finish it, but I did finally go back and finish Jessica Jones.
Oh yeah?
I actually just finished it before I came over and we started recording. I don't know, like you had mentioned that it doesn't get better. I think that there are some strong episodes within the series, or the first season. It's definitely not on the same caliber as Daredevil, in my opinion. And I think that the last episode left a lot. I don't know. I didn't get the resolution in the last episode that I wanted. It ends abruptly.
For sure.
I would say that Kilgrave is one of my favorite villains in the Marvel Universe because I love the psychological aspect of it.
Sure.
I love David Tennant. Like, his performance was amazing. That character's amazing. And the way that things are resolved with that character was a huge, huge letdown for me. I was really expecting something better, something more monumental, because there were some teases at big things happening throughout the series. And in the end, it was pretty straightforward, and I was really let down with that.
Yeah. That show definitely plateaus.
Yeah, I agree.
And it does not end. It doesn't stick the landing very well. Like you said, it ends really abruptly and not very satisfying.
No, not at all.
I really liked the first few episodes. I was really digging it. Not quite to the extent that I loved Daredevil, but it was I kind of assumed that was going to be the case because I didn't like the character. Not necessarily I just didn't follow the character like I followed Daredevil.
Yeah.
So I didn't expect to like it as much as Daredevil, but it was up there. Especially the first, I would say half of the season, I was really digging it. And I was like, oh man, maybe Netflix and Marvel kind of has this down, even though it's a character that I don't really pay attention to.
Yeah.
It's still really intriguing to me. And then, like I said, it just kind of plateaus and doesn't stick the landing very well. And I don't know. The last episode or two kind of felt like, okay, I'm doing this because I've gotten this far, and it's almost felt like homework to a certain extent.
I'll be honest. I don't really think Kristen Ritter is that great of an actress.
Oh, no.
I don't think that she was very good as Jessica Jones, and she got a lot of praise for this role, but I don't see the difference between her playing Jessica Jones and her playing like the buddy in the comedy movies that she's done before.
Yeah.
I mean, I never watched the bitch in Apartment 23 or the bee in Apartment 23 or whatever that show was, but I can't imagine that she was much different in that show than she is in Jessica Jones. She's kind of a one-note actress, and I think they could have done a lot better. I
thought she was all right in Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah, I forget she's in Breaking Bad. I mean, she was fine in that, but still, I don't know. The thing that I saw her first in was She's Out of My League. She's like, what's that? Is it Alice Eve? Is that her name?
I don't remember.
She's the friend. In that, and she's very much just like Jessica Jones, with his mannerisms and stuff. And I guess you'll get a little bit of that. It's the same person.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I just didn't buy her as Jessica Jones for whatever reason.
Yeah.
All right, man. What are you into?
I am into Hail Caesar. Have you watched this yet?
I saw it Wednesday night. Yes.
All right, cool. So it is the latest film written and directed by the Coen brothers, who I'm a huge fan of. Fargo is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Didn't quite make my top 10 because we did those episodes earlier I guess it was late last year. It This film follows a Hollywood fixer, played by Josh Brolin, for a couple of days as he tries to manage a studio full of interesting characters. This movie is essentially just a love letter to old Hollywood. It seems like the Coen brothers basically made this movie because they loved watching these movies growing up, similar to the way that J.J. Abrams made Super 8, because he loved making Super 8 movies growing up. And we actually had an episode, I guess it was early last year, where Tyler was sick and Matt Hurt from The Obsessive Viewer came on, and we talked about our favorite movies about making movies. And I kind of wish I had seen this movie prior to that, because it's a great movie about making movies. It definitely gives you an insight to the chaos that goes on in old Hollywood making these movies. You're surprised that any of these movies ever got made. And it seemed like this movie was almost an excuse for the Coen brothers just to show off. Like, they're so much better at making movies than anyone else that they could make. This is not a great caper movie, but it does have caper aspects to it. It has a fantastic musical scene. There's a really great synchronized swimming scene. Like, it was just like, they just wanted to show off all the shit that they could do better than everybody else. When you think of the Coen brothers, I think you think of, obviously, Oscars, like Oscar bait movies. They make a lot of those, kind of indie movies that, well, I guess you can't really call them indie because their movies generally do pretty well at the box office. But you just think of those movies, and they've won Oscars before, obviously. And then when I saw that one of their movies was getting released in February, we've talked about this before. It's kind of a dumping ground for movies, and you have few movies here and there. We talked about Kingsman during our Pride and Prejudice and Zombies review, kind of rising above the time period that it was released, and obviously PBZ did not do that. This movie made me nervous that they were kind of dumping it, that maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, because I had heard some stuff going into it. It sounds really interesting. And it's not a perfect movie. There's a lot of threads in this movie that don't necessarily pay off. And there's a lot going on. And I understand that it's Josh Brolin's story, his character, Eddie, I think it's Eddie Mannix, something like that. It's his story, and he's bouncing from problem to problem. And so I understand how it's supposed to be kind of chaotic, because his life is kind of chaotic. But there's not enough resolution, almost like we just talked about with Jessica Jones. It just kind of, everything just kind of wraps up really abruptly. And I don't know, there's just a lot of threads in here that don't satisfy me, like as far as the payoff's concerned, especially the one with Scarlett Johansson. It just kind of off screen, they mention how that gets wrapped up, and that wasn't satisfying at all. There's a weird submarine scene that I thought was super, super weird, and just kind of bogged down the movie for about 10-15 minutes. It took way too long. I think this is a solid film, but it's certainly not their best. I expect so much from them that this just wasn't. It just wasn't up to snuff for me.
I agree. I think I disliked it a lot more than
really?
You. I think this is the worst Coen Brothers movie I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, I really did not enjoy it. I was bored. It was chaotic all over the place.
Have you ever seen A Serious Man?
No. But I watched like the first 5 minutes of that movie, and I think I fell asleep, and I never went back to watch it. And I don't remember Burn After Reading. I didn't really like Burn After Reading that much.
That is the worst one for me.
So I have not seen their whole catalog. I'm basing this off of the movies I have seen, and it is by far the worst. Like I said, I was bored. I thought that the musical scene was awesome. Like that whole scene with Channing Tatum dancing was amazing. And there were bits and pieces of it that I liked, but I don't know, man. It just didn't work for me. I felt like there was a lot of talent in it because they had the opportunity to work with the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
Like that's the only reason Jonah Hill shows up, and Tilda Swinton and a couple other people. They're basically, they advertise like all of these names are in this movie, and they were all cameos except for Josh Brolin for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's not, I don't know if maybe that's because I wasn't expecting that. But, yeah, I was really bored. It didn't do it for me.
I wouldn't necessarily say bored. I think it was for sure funnier than Burn After Reading, but I really don't like that movie at all.
Yeah, I need to watch that again, just to kind of see how it compares to this. It really reminded me of Monuments Men. I think Monuments Men a couple years ago when that came out was released in February, and maybe initially when they were making it, they thought that it could be an Oscar-nominated movie, and then they're like, actually, this isn't that great. We'll release it in February during Oscar time, but it can't technically be nominated. Yeah, and that's kind of like the vibe I got with this. Just a lot of star power, but really boring and dry.
I think it makes sense why they kind of dumped it in this particular season, because it definitely wouldn't have stood up to all the Oscar bait movies, I guess. I don't like that term because it kind of has a negative connotation to it. But those types of movies, I definitely don't think it would have stood up to those types of movies. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I was bored by any means. I will probably own this movie just because I am a Coen Brothers fan. I blind bought Burn After Reading, and I immediately regretted it after watching it because I really don't like that movie. I own A Serious Man, even though because it's them, I kind of just assumed that it went over my head a little bit because I was quite bored with that movie.
Yeah.
And because it's them and because they're just fantastic writers and fantastic filmmakers, I'm going to assume that it went over my head, that it really has this really deep, poignant idea and theme behind it, and I just didn't get it. But I would say that I was a little disappointed, but I think disappointed is kind of a strong word because I did really like it.
Me and the buddy I saw this with were in the theater by ourselves.
Was it Will?
It was Will.
God damn it.
I was, since we were the only ones in the theater, like I had my phone out a lot.
Oh, really?
It was that, I don't know.
Our theater was packed.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw it on a Wednesday night. It was the late showing and there was threat, I think, of some snow.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We were the only ones in there, but, yeah, this is off topic, and if time doesn't permit, I can cut it out. But did you see the trailer for The Witch? Was that attached to your Hail Caesar?
I don't remember.
Like the old-timey horror movie?
Then no.
It looks a little creepy, man.
Oh, yeah.
It comes out, I think,
it
in
looks
March.
like kind of like The Village.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Except maybe actually good.
Yeah. That actually looks intriguing.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see that. It was funny watching that. I guess he doesn't listen to podcasts, so he'll kill me. I guess Will doesn't really like scary movies. We were in this theater by ourselves, and this trailer comes on, and he was like a little antsy in his seat. Like, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of want to see that movie. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so our next segment is just plainly called Comics. Tyler and I read a ton of comics each week, and we like to spotlight one or two. So what did you read this week, Tyler?
I'm going to spotlight 6.
Oh, yeah?
But it's an arc. So
okay.
I'm not going to go through 6 different titles. What I want to talk about is an arc that just recently wrapped up, I think, in December, called Robin War.
Okay.
It takes place in Robin War #1, Grayson 15, Detective Comics 47, We Are Robin 7, Robin Son of Batman 7, and then it concludes in Robin War #2.
How much does that piss you off?
It didn't piss me off too much because I heard about this arc afterwards and I just went back and bought those issues.
Okay, cool.
And I was able to read through all of those without reading, like, I stopped with We Are Robin and I still knew what was going on. I stopped with Grayson and I still knew what was going on. So
yeah.
It flowed together really well. There are some tie-in issues. I think there's 3 tie-in issues to this series that I did not read, so I can't speak to those. But I will say that I really enjoyed this arc. Basically the premise for it is that, I don't know if you're familiar with We Are Robin, but
nope.
in, Batman's, I guess, absence, Detective Gordon is Batman now. There's kids all over Gotham that are becoming Robins. And it's like a gang, kind of like a gang, but they're trying to do good. And, basically this arc starts off with one of the Robins accidentally killing a cop. And so they put this law into effect, and I forget what the law is called, but it basically outlaws Robins, and you can't wear an R, and they think you're associated with the Robins, you're going to be arrested. So stuff kind of hits the fan, and all of the Robins end up getting involved. So you have Damian Wayne, who's the current Robin, comes in. Jason Todd, who's Red Hood, comes in. Tim Drake, who's Red Robin, comes in. Yep. And then Dick Grayson ends up coming back to Gotham because he's been outside of Gotham doing special agent stuff in his own comic, but he gets basically roped back into this. And it ends up, I'm going to spoil the fuck out of this, so sorry.
It's fine. I'm never going to read it.
Yeah, I figured you wouldn't. But it's the payoff is what's great about it. So it turns out that this is all being masterminded by the Court of Owls.
Okay,
and
cool.
That's not too big of a spoiler. You figure that out, I believe, in the first issue. And their whole plot is basically getting Dick Grayson back to Gotham, because I don't know if you remember in the Court of Owls or in the Night of Owls that Dick Grayson was actually being raised to be a Talon.
Yep.
And he was going to be the Grey Son of Gotham and yada, yada, yada. So in the final issue, there's basically this big war between the Talons and all these Robins, and Damian ends up joining the Court of Owls to kind of put an end to it. And the last few pages, you find out that there's like this Parliament of Owls, and it's not just in Gotham, it's in cities all over the world. And to save Damian and basically get Damian back onto a right track, Dick Grayson reluctantly takes his place in the Court of Owls, and like the final panel is him putting on the mask. So I'm kind of really curious to see where they go with this. I'm hoping that it's something that continues and kind of works its way into the main Batman storyline after Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo finish up, because I think that would be a really interesting story to kind of see Batman and Dick Grayson at odds over this.
Sure.
So I really like the way that it paid off quite a bit, and I'd really like to see it continue. It says to be continued in Grayson, but I was looking at the next few issues of Grayson, and the covers at least, and the synopsis for the issues make no mention of it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious to see how it picks up and where it goes, but it was definitely a fun little arc.
Yeah, that sounds cool, man. Like I said, I'm never going to read this. Even if I was, I mean, it does sound interesting, don't get me wrong, but even if I was somewhat intrigued to read it, I fucking hate. That's probably one of the things that pisses me off about comic books is when they try to make you buy multiple.
Yeah.
I guess in this case, it wouldn't be that bad, but I've talked about it, I think, on the podcast before. Like, I'll read I have a ongoing series that I'll read, and then it ties in with this other series that I have to buy books, or I don't know what's going on in the series that it pisses me off. Comic books try to do that shit all the time, and it seriously is just a cash grab, and it pisses me off.
This run is guilty of that. I will say, though, if you buy the issues that I listed and read them in that order, it reads like its own book. Yeah,
like I said, it doesn't sound like it's that egregious in this particular case, but and if I were to be inclined to read this, I would just do what you did and get the issues that it pertains to. But in general, oh my God, I can't stand when they do that. It's so irritating. I'm already spending like $20 a week. So it's not like I'm buying like one or two titles and I'm being a punk bitch about having to buy this extra book here and there. No, I spend like $20 a week buying comic books. I buy a lot of fucking comic books.
What I hate is whenever somebody says something like related to a different comic book, and then it's like in an asterisk, and it says "See Gotham Academy number whatever," and this comic does it a couple times in the first issue, but it kind of stops after that. But I hate whenever comics do that. All right, man. What did you read this week?
I read something that I actually brought up on my first New Comic Book Day video. I'm really enjoying those. So if you haven't already, check those out on our YouTube channel. It's called Code Prue. It is actually written by Garth Ennis, who's written a ton of stuff, great stuff, Preacher, just a ton of good stuff. And I just recently I talked about, well, I guess it was like a year and a half ago, I talked about Rover Red Charlie, which is a mini series he did, like a post-apocalyptic, but it's with dogs. He also did kind of an alien sort of ripoff with Caliban. And I really enjoyed both of those books a lot. I think I talked about both of them on various episodes of the podcast. This particular book is kind of a dark comedy / horror. the video that I mentioned, the new comic book day video that I did, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I talked about issue 2. Hadn't read either of the issues yet. I blind bought it because I am a fan of his and the artwork looked really cool. So I'm the guy that definitely judges the book by the cover. The artwork looked really cool and he wrote it, so I picked it up. It's centered around the main character, Prue, hence the title. She's a she's a college student, training to be a paramedic, and her wannabe witch roommates. Basically she has 3 roommates and they legitimately want to be witches. Not like flying around on broomstick witches, but like casting spells and shit. And she just kind of makes fun of them the whole time. I'm being being vague on purpose because I really can't go into particulars about this book because the book doesn't really tell you a whole lot about the plot. They're being very vague, which is another problem I have with comic books is with ongoing series. I don't know if I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but with ongoing series, a lot of times these books don't want to blow their load. And so they're always vague. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times they'll plan out story arcs one at a time, but a lot of times they don't know what's gonna happen 10 issues from now. So they try to be as vague as possible so they don't back themselves in the corner. So this book is really vague and it doesn't give you a whole lot of plot. It's a lot of character work. It talks a lot about the roommates and kind of building their relationship. There is a fairly big thing that happens about the middle or three-quarters of the way through the second book. That's a pretty big deal. But for the most part, it's really just building the mythology, building the universe of this book. There's basically an underground organization that imprisons monsters and deities, and they're trying to recruit Prue. She's, I guess, the paramedics, I guess, run this, or I don't know exactly. Again, it's pretty vague on the details. I know it sounds silly, but it is kind of silly, and it is a dark comedy. So I think it's supposed to be a little silly. There's a really funny moment where one of the carekeepers of this organization is playing Monopoly with this huge squid monster, and it's really funny. I know it sounds silly, but I think it's supposed to be. It does definitely have its moments, and I'm going to stick with it just because I am a fan of him, and the artwork is really cool. But I wouldn't necessarily say go run out and get this because especially these first 2 issues are not awesome. They didn't blow me out of the water by any means.
I can't remember. Did you like Rover Red, Charlie? I thought that was
I fucking loved it.
Okay, I couldn't remember if you liked it or you didn't.
Yeah,
for some reason I thought you disliked it, but that's been a year and a half ago, so forgive me for not remembering that correctly.
No, I am a huge fan of him. Caliban, I didn't really like that much. Like I said, it was kind of an Alien ripoff, and I don't know, it tried to do a lot of stuff, and I don't think it necessarily executed it all that well. It was a fun book, but I didn't really like it that much.
Yeah, that's fair. I've never read any of this guy's stuff. Did you say it was an Image book?
No, it's Avatar. It's an indie comic book thing. Yeah.
Oh, cool. You ready to move on to nerd news?
Yeah, for sure.
So every week we have a segment where we talk about all the big nerd news stories that broke since the last time we spoke. So we'll go ahead and dive into some that came up this week. So we had the Super Bowl last Sunday.
Yep.
A lot of TV spots. To me, I didn't get to watch Super Bowl. I was working, and I didn't go back and watch all of the TV spots, but there was one that caught my eye that I did go back and watch, and that was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadow TV spot because it shows our first glimpse of Krang. And I was actually pretty impressed with how Krang looks. What did you think?
Yeah, I was pretty nervous. I mean, I'm nervous because now I have to, I was going to root for this movie anyways. I thought the first one it got crushed by critics, and I don't think that was very fair. But I'm super nervous about this movie now because it's one of my Rotten Tomatoes movies, and I think it's going to get crushed just because critics are not going to admit that they were wrong about the first one. So I think it's already gonna be just. I mean, they're already gonna go into it. Well, the first one was horrible, and so I'm really nervous about it. But I was super nervous about how he was gonna look because he could get silly. I mean, he's already silly.
Oh, for sure.
And so if you take liberties with that character, it could get silly so fucking quick. Just like unbelievably silly. They took liberties with the turtles and the turtles look silly.
That's
like
exactly what I was going to say.
I mean, you can't really screw up turtles and they still manage to do it. And he's already kind of silly. So, I thought he was going to look really stupid. And I mean, you only get a real quick glimpse of him, but so far so good.
Some people would argue that he already looks really stupid, but no, it's like you said. That's exactly what I was going to say. They made the turtles. I hate if you go back and listen to our TMNT review from a year and a half ago, you'll know that my biggest complaint was how they made the turtles look like monsters and scary instead of the turtles we know and love. And I was afraid they would do something like that with Krang, obviously. Like you have this alien squid, you put him in like a transformer or something. Yeah. Like that's what I thought it was going to look like. But the robot body that he has looks a lot like the classic one, which I was really impressed with. So hopefully that speaks to what they'll be doing with this movie.
Yeah, for sure. I was pretty happy with it.
So I don't know if you'll have an opinion on this because I don't really think I do, but Charlize Theron is being sought for the villain for the Fast and Furious 8 movie.
Do not care. I saw the first two and I have not seen a scene of those movies since then.
I really think that this is really beneath Charlize Theron, and I would hope that she's not really considering it, although I do think the Huntsman sequel is also below her, and she's doing that, so what do I know?
The first one was below her.
I mean, I've never seen the first one, but the sequel isn't even, like, Snow White's not in it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, that movie, I'll probably watch Snow White and the Huntsman before that comes out so I can see it, but I don't know.
You're gonna plan on watching that movie?
Maybe. I got Movie Pass, man, why not?
Yeah.
And then we'll see what's out around that time.
No, thank you.
Okay, this one isn't really for either of us, but us being a nerd culture podcast, I feel like I had to bring it up. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is going to be a stage show, I guess, in London. A sequel to the Harry Potter books is going to be released as a novel as well the day after the play debuts. So, I guess technically, if you want to think of it that way, which many people are, you're getting a new Harry Potter book this summer.
Yeah.
Which, again, I know you're not interested, I'm not interested, but that's a big deal for a lot of people, so.
I think it's actually, I didn't know this going into this, but, I think that's kind of shitty that they would release it the day after. Like, let's say I'm not a fan, so it's not too much of a leap to say I'm not a fan. Let's say I'm just a casual fan. I've never read any of the books, saw all the movies, but never read any of the books. I could literally know what's going to happen in that book before somebody that may have read every single book and seen every single movie.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of shitty. That doesn't reward the true fans that have read all the books.
I think that they're wanting to put the emphasis on this as being a play.
For sure.
And then, so the novel's just kind of coming second to it. But I understand exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like, probably, I would imagine how some fans of Game of Thrones feel now that the TV show is basically ahead of where they're at in the novels.
Oh yeah, I know that's how they feel.
Yeah, so, people are kind of finding stuff out at the same time now, and the people that were loyal to the books way before there was even talk of a show are kind of figuring stuff out that way instead of through reading George R.R. Martin's work. So
yeah.
Okay. Kevin Smith is getting a talk show on AMC.
I saw that. That's pretty cool.
I'm pretty sure it's called Geeking Out.
Yep.
And it's going to be him, and I don't know if I'll pronounce this guy's name right, but I believe it's Greg Grunberg.
Which I thought was a weird choice.
Was he in Lost?
He was in Heroes.
Okay, he was in Heroes, and he had a part in Star Wars. He was an X-Wing pilot in The Force Awakens.
Yep.
Apparently he's a big nerd, but it's going to be 30-minute episodes, I believe, once a week, starting. They made it sound like the first episode will be after Comic-Con this summer. So, I don't know. It sounds pretty interesting. Kevin Smith kind of already does this though. His Fat Man on Batman podcast has become a YouTube show basically where him and Mark Bernardin talk about the basically nerd news or the geek news throughout the that breaks each week. So it seems like he's kind of already does that, but obviously this is a bigger stage. I'm kind of curious to see what kind of chemistry him and Greg Grunberg have. And I don't know. I like that AMC has this working relationship with him, like with Comic Book Men, and I know that he did a pilot for Hollywood Babylon with him that they ended up not picking up, but it's kind of cool that a big network like that is interested in Kevin Smith's wares, because obviously we're both big Kevin Smith fans, and I don't know, I like the idea of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll be watching, of course. I watch Comic Book Men, even though it's not great. I mean, it's Pawn Stars with comic books, and you can tell with most reality shows that it's a lot of this shit is staged.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just loyal to Kevin Smith, and there are a few moments here and there and a couple episodes that are cool, so I'll watch it for that.
Okay, yeah, for sure. This next one was a bit surprising because Aziz Ansari was kind of no comment on it for a while, but Master of None has been renewed for a second season in 2017. He was like, after the first season came out, that was like obviously the first thing everybody asked is there going to be a season 2? And he kind of said that, you know, they poured so much into this first season that it was hard to think about a season 2 and how much would go into creating a season 2. But I'm going to guess that the check that Netflix offered was pretty large. So we will be getting a season 2 of it. Hopefully, he'll keep the creative juices flowing because season 1 was really great stuff. So I'm definitely have high hopes for season 2.
Now, he hasn't given any details on season 2, has he?
No, I think he basically tweeted it out like yesterday.
Okay, so here's my thoughts. Would you rather see him pick up where it left off, or just kind of start anew and it's a completely different? I mean, obviously the same type of show. It's not going to go from the comedy that season 1 was to like Breaking Bad, the season 2. Would you kind of want to see a comedy anthology? I mean, because for me, season 1 was from start to finish the story. Like, it perfectly, from start to finish, was a perfect story.
Exactly. I don't know where you go with that character from there.
Yeah.
Like, I guess you could keep following his exploits and his love life and whatever else, but I do see what you're saying, and I don't think that they'll go that route. I think they'll continue this story with the characters they created for season 1, but I definitely I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of cool. I mean, I guess they could just do what Louis and The Simpsons and several other shows do, just like shit doesn't matter.
Well,
I mean, I guess in a sense that's an anthology series.
I mean, spoiler, like the first season ends with him on a plane to, where is it, Italy? I believe it. Or
something like that.
Somewhere in Europe to learn to cook, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you could follow this character running around Europe.
But then he doesn't have friends. Like,
yeah, and that's, to me, that was one of the strongest parts of the show was his friend that's, I forget the actor's name, but the guy from Tim and Eric. Yeah. Like, he was my favorite character on the show. So, I don't know. We'll see, I guess, as we get closer to 2017.
Sure.
All right, what next? This one is a bit of a bummer. So, Transformers. Have you seen anything with this yet?
Nope.
I'm glad that I get to be the bearer of bad news for you. So, we're going to get new Transformer movies in 2017, 2018, and 2019.
See, you're smirking because you think that I'm going to get upset. I'm done with Transformers. I could care less about it.
But wait, 2017, we're getting a sequel with Mark Wahlberg and Michael Bay back to direct.
Still don't care.
2018, we're getting a Bumblebee spinoff movie. And then, we don't know what's coming in 2019, unfortunately. But
I know what's coming. I'm not going to see any of these movies.
That's big talk now, and I wish I was going to stand that line with you. But for some reason, I have a feeling that whenever the time comes, I'm going to look at my movie pass card and be like, what's the worst that could happen? And then I'll just be pissed off.
Yeah, I went and saw Age of Extinction, and I swore that I wasn't going to see that movie. And then I went and saw it, and I had to take a shit. Like, halfway through that movie, I left, took a shit. That was the best part of that movie.
No, I completely agree. Like, the first one is okay, and from there it's just shit.
Yeah.
If just 4 movies now, or will this be the 5th movie? Yeah, this would be Transformers 5 that comes out in 2017. So, I mean, what more can you do with these fucking characters, and why do we need to see Mark Wahlberg running around with them? No, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's a bummer. Let's see. I got 2 more, and one of them's kind of a transition into our review, so I'll do the other one first. Amazing Fantasy 15, which is famous for being the first appearance of Spider-Man.
Yep.
Is going to be auctioned off here soon. I
just got my tax refund back.
It's apparently in near perfect condition, and it could be it's rated a 9.4, which is a big deal. Like, there's comics that came out last year that are rated 9.2. So the fact that this old comic is rated 9.4 is quite impressive. They're saying that it could go for, crazy numbers. The last time a near pristine issue of Amazing Fantasy 15 sold at auction was 5 years ago, and that copy fetched $325,000.
That's exactly what I got back from my refund.
I think you might want to check your tax forms a little bit. So I'll be curious to see how much this goes for, but I don't know. It's a pretty cool story.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously that is a little bit more than I got back from my refund, but yeah, I mean, that would be cool. I mean, I'll never see that comic.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyways, last story, Deadpool 2 has been greenlit.
Sure.
So we will be getting a sequel to Deadpool, which is probably pretty obvious at this point. It's supposed to do crazy numbers, especially being a rated R movie in February. It's supposed to do great numbers this weekend. It's tracking really well. So that's not too big of a surprise, but it is good news. And that being said, we could probably get into our review of Deadpool 1.
Yep. Like Tyler just said, we're reviewing Deadpool. This is our main topic part of the show. This is one of my Rotten Tomato movies. I believe it was either my 2nd or 3rd round pick. It's doing really well. I mean, it was I knew it was going to do well, but it was still kind of a gamble how high I picked it. I checked right before we started recording, 83%. I'm really happy with that. So, yeah, I mean,
this whole Rotten Tomatoes draft has put me in a weird position, because when I got out of the movie, I was thinking about it, and it's like
you were rooting against it.
Yeah, I'm kind of rooting against movies that I've been excited for. So,
yeah.
So it's a weird situation, but I mean, it'll be fun at the end of the year to see where things lie.
And I just built a new page on our website while we're talking about the Rotten Tomatoes that you can check the scorecard. I'm going to keep track of it. I'm going to post the pictures and everything like that. So I did that a couple of weeks ago. So check that out if you want to keep track of, as the year goes along, what each of our scores are. Getting back to Deadpool, Deadpool is obviously about Wade Wilson, a former special service agent turned mercenary who must surrender to drastic measures to save himself from cancer, which turn him into Deadpool. So we like to start each review off by talking kind of a general overview. We call it broad strokes. So Tyler, what'd you feel about Deadpool?
I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yep.
I'm really glad that this movie got made. Ryan Reynolds has been doing a lot of press recently, talking about how he's been trying to get this movie made for 11 years. And I feel like, as a fan, I've been following this movie for 11 years, and you had your ups and your downs, like the downs of hearing that this character was going to be included in the Wolverine movie, and then seeing what they did with that. And then the ups being whenever that test footage was leaked and the movie was greenlit. So, I do have some issues with it here and there, that we'll get into as we get into, some of our other categories of reviewing this movie. But broad strokes is that I really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy that it seems like the majority of the people in the theater that I saw it with really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that, this character is doing so well, and that a rated R comic book adaptation is doing so well, because those don't have a great track record either.
For sure. When we talked a couple of weeks ago, when we did our Rotten Tomatoes draft, we obviously, because we're big comic book nerds, we had a lot of comic book movies, superhero movies, and we discussed how we're a little bit nervous because we're getting to that point where we've been having these movies for so long, we feel like critics are going to fall into superhero fatigue. And as much as I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I felt that a little bit during Age of Ultron. I did not like that movie as much as most people did and as much as I thought I was going to. And I think I needed something a little bit different. I love superheroes. I love comic books, obviously. But I think I definitely needed something different than I don't want to say generic because they're good movies, obviously. I love those movies. But I think I needed something a little bit more than just the PG-13 Marvel Cinematic Universe superhero movie. And that's definitely what this movie is. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a lot of fun, like you said. It lays it on a little too thick at times. I don't think it's as clever as it thinks it is. It's really funny, don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. But there are certain moments during this film that I just kind of wish it let the moment just be. There's a particular moment at the end, especially where a female lead takes off his mask, and there's a particular joke. They've already done that joke like 3 times during the movie, and I'm just like, come on, man. Let the moment be what it is. You don't always... I get it. I get the character. I love the character, but you don't always have to make a joke all the time. Just let a moment be. I just feel like I would have connected to this movie a lot more than just, oh, it's a funny movie. Oh, it's different from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think I would have enjoyed this movie and connected with it more if it just tiny bit, just every once in a while, just let it be and not make a joke all the time.
I mean, I will get into specifics with story and stuff, but I appreciated the jokes, I think, more than you did.
I thought the jokes were funny. Don't get me wrong. I would have appreciated if it had a little bit more to it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's just get right into the story then. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing that we haven't seen before. It's a pretty straightforward revenge story. It took some liberties with the source material, obviously, like most of these movies do, these comic book superhero movies. It kind of gets the idea, it kind of gets the bullet points of the particular character, and his character in general kind of has a vague origin story anyways, so it's kind of, it's hard to say that it took a lot of liberties because nobody really knows his origin story. I really enjoyed how, and this is not necessarily the story, so to speak, but I liked how they broke the origins as far as this movie's concerned, kind of in pieces, so you didn't have to, not necessarily, it wasn't boring by any means, but sometimes the origin stories part of the movie is not the most exciting aspect of it, so I liked how they kind of cut it in with that particular fight scene that was basically just a souped up version of that leaked test footage that you mentioned before, so I really liked that. And I think it was kind of, it had its flaws. It definitely had some tropes. Like I said, it's kind of a straightforward revenge story, but it almost was like a perfect format for that particular movie because it knew it had flaws. And because he breaks the fourth wall and they make a lot of jokes, they could poke fun at the fact that it's cliche. He literally makes a joke about how he goes over to the X-Men, Xavier's mansion, and he says, I don't know why I only see 2 of you. It's a really big house. So it's almost like the perfect format. Yeah, the story is kind of cliche, but because he is who he is, he can make fun of that. So it's almost like they found the perfect format for this particular movie because they didn't have to come up with a super clever story and like super original story because they could just have their character make fun of how it's not original, and it would almost make it original.
Yeah, and I love how meta this movie is and how in the know the character is, and all the breaking the fourth wall and all of that stuff. I love all of it, but I don't think that that's an excuse to do the cliche origin story, which it's not like watching Spider-Man. It's not like,
yeah, I mean, there's not a 10-15 minute sex scene in Spider-Man.
I mean, it's much more adult, and that makes a lot more fun. But specifically the part where he's at the program and they're curing him of his cancer and giving him these abilities and yada, yada, yada. Like, I thought that part was a little dry. like that whole.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There were some funny bits in there, but there were definitely bits where I was just kind of like, all right, let's get back to him cracking jokes and being funny and the meta and not the cliche stuff. So that's like one small bicker about this movie, because most of the movie is him cracking jokes and being meta and all of the fun stuff that we know about Deadpool, but there's a part there in the middle that lags for me just a little bit with the story. As far as the rest of the story goes, I don't really have any complaints. It's very simple and straightforward, like you said. But you know, for this character's first outing and introducing this character to a lot of people that might not know about Deadpool like we do, I think that it was probably kind of necessary. And it seems like, you know, in a Deadpool 2, they might take more liberties with that X-Force universe and the Deadpool universe and some of the more out there stuff that goes along with that character.
How'd you feel about Colossus? Because obviously it's a different Colossus than in the X-Men universe, which it's weird because Deadpool is set within the X-Men universe.
Yeah, it's more faithful to the comic than the Colossus we've seen before, which I appreciate. I thought that it was a good balance to the Deadpool character because he's so straight-laced, and I thought that the bits with him were funny, especially some. I don't want to spoil anything, but a part at the end where Colossus is kind of giving a speech about being a hero and what results from it is, I kind of saw it coming, but it was still
I thought
funny.
you were going to talk about a different particular at the end. There's that came out of nowhere because he's not the character that was making the joke. I mean, even though it wasn't necessarily a joke, it was more of a joke at his expense, but
95% of the comedy in this movie comes from Deadpool, and 4% of it comes from his girlfriend. Yeah. So to see that bit of comedy come from Colossus and one of the villains, I'm assuming we're on the same page with this, was kind of out of left field and was kind of a fun surprise at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, Colossus was cool. I liked Warpath a lot. I thought that she was a fun character to have in it. I really like how it kind of incorporated the X-Men universe, but really still made it about Deadpool and didn't force a Hugh Jackman cameo as Wolverine or something to kind of take the spotlight off of this character.
For sure. Villain? Do you have any thoughts on the villain? Pretty generic.
Super weak villain. Kind of suffers the same way Guardians of the Galaxy did with Ronan.
Yep.
And I think it's the same thing where you have this movie where you're trying to introduce this character to the audiences. Obviously Deadpool's become a very popular character, but I would say the casual moviegoer still doesn't necessarily understand Deadpool like you and I do. So you have to spend the movie explaining why this character's like this and why the comedy is like this and how he breaks the fourth wall. And you don't have a lot of time to set up a character like Ajax that nobody honestly really cares about. Yeah. Like he's basically just there to give Wade Wilson, Deadpool, something to fight against and something to girl against. So
yeah, I immediately thought after we got out of this movie that it was exactly like Ronan.
Yeah.
In Guardians of the Galaxy. So I like that you brought that up, but I pretty much feel exactly the same about the villain. I thought, what's his name? Ed Sheeran?
Ed Sheeran. Yeah.
Something like that. I thought he did an alright job. I don't agree with him leaving Game of Thrones to do Transporter and eventually, I guess, doing this movie because it's such a weak character. But, I mean, he needed something to, it's a revenge story. He needed something to revenge against.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I doubt, I mean, this character's not going to be, obviously, well, I guess spoiler alert, it's not going to be, a character that we have to care too much about, just like we didn't have to care about Ronan after Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
I'm not going to fucking say spoiler alert before that. If you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy.
And you're interested in a Deadpool movie review from some obscure podcast and you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy, that's on you at this point.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move right on to the performances. For me, similar to, and I'm sorry that I keep equating it to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but similar to the way I felt after we watched Ant-Man, I can no longer see anybody else as Ant-Man. I can no longer see anybody else as Ryan Reynolds. I think he killed it, even though he doesn't really get to act a whole lot in this movie because he's in the Deadpool suit.
Yeah.
A good chunk of it, more than you would think with the first movie of a franchise. He's in the suit a lot, which I appreciated.
For sure.
I liked how they just started the movie out with him in the suit. I thought that was pretty cool, but that kind of goes back to what I was saying about them cutting it. But I thought when he needed carry some weight, he did a really good job.
Oh, for sure. I think Ryan Reynolds catches too much shit. And I mean, he has made some poor movie decisions and some poor movies, but like this movie makes up for all of it, in my opinion, because obviously this has been his pet project for, like he keeps saying, 11 years. And, you know, he puts his pride away and he's willing to do a movie where he's behind a mask most of the time.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. Like, he is the embodiment of Deadpool.
For sure.
And I appreciate that more than anything. Like, I hate that, you know, we had those stories come out where Chris Evans is like, well, I'm going to probably retire from acting and start directing. I don't really want to do Captain America anymore. And those kind of stories. And you hear Ryan Reynolds come out and say, like, I want to play this character for forever. Like, I mean, that's easy to say after the first movie, but like that kind of passion around the project you're doing, especially it being like such a big geek property like Deadpool, like he knows straight to a nerd's heart by saying that kind of stuff.
He's basically just Van Wilder in a superhero costume.
I think Seth Meyers, he was on Seth Meyers the other night, and Seth Meyers said, or it was Jimmy Fallon, one of them said, it's like a cross between Van Wilder and Green Lantern. And Ryan Reynolds was like, whoa, not so much Green Lantern.
So, I mean, he's just fantastic, and I couldn't see anybody else doing a better job. I mean, obviously, you just raved about it. I think obviously it has a lot to do with how much he cares about the character and the property. I don't want to say disappointed, but I liked TJ Miller in this movie. I liked TJ Miller as a comedian. I thought he was a weird character to have in the movie because he definitely plays the comic relief. They literally in the opening credits, they make a joke about that. And there's so much comedy in this movie. There's no need for comic relief. Like, they don't understand what comic relief is.
Like, the main character is the comic relief.
Exactly. The comedy is such a huge part of this movie. TJ Miller some of the stuff that he said was really funny, but his character was not needed in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate that he was in it, and I appreciate, like, him being the buddy character, but I definitely agree they could have gone a different route and he wouldn't have been missed.
Yeah.
He doesn't bring anything to it, to be honest.
For sure. The blind lady also.
I thought that was funny.
I thought it was funny, but it doesn't.
I mean, I'm not, I've read my fair share of Deadpool comics, but I'm not well versed in like the really obscure characters that are in the Deadpool universe. And from what I understand, she is some obscure character from the Deadpool universe. Same thing with that Bob character that shows up at towards the end. Those are characters from the comic. I thought that his relationship with her was really funny.
Yeah.
It was kind of thrown in a weird point in the movie.
That was kind of my problem, was that.
But just for the one joke that, like, my favorite joke of the whole movie comes between him and her. So, so for that, I can forgive it.
Can we just say it? Because I'm pretty sure it's the same one.
Oh, yeah.
The cocaine joke?
No.
Oh, God damn it.
His little hand.
No.
God damn it.
That was funny, but I fucking loved when he said that, the kilos of cocaine right next to the cure for blindness. Man, I laughed so fucking hard. I think I was like the only one in the theater that laughed at that joke.
No, he just rags on her constantly, and like, I don't know, anytime I've always thought about like that, like if you cut off Wolverine's arm, like how would it regenerate?
Yeah.
And whenever he, like, spoiler alert, like, I apologize, like, if this is a huge spoiler for you, I don't think it's that big. Like, Deadpool loses a hand, like, how does the hand grow back? Yeah. And he has this little baby hand. It's like, that was really funny to me for some reason.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be able to cut off Wolverine's hand anyways.
Oh, yeah, adamantium.
Yeah.
Good point.
I felt like we're a nerd culture podcast.
Well,
I had to.
What is it? Adamantium can be cut off with adamantium because he loses his claws and his.
This is a huge side note, and I know out of the whole retrospective of that entire movie, it shouldn't bother me this much. But when he gets shot in the head in Wolverine Origins, it should not grow back. The metal does not grow back.
He should be dead. Well, I don't know. I guess that's an art. I don't know. It's such a really fucking lame way to erase his memory.
Yeah, for sure.
Either way.
So the last little section that we're going to talk about the movie is a big one in this particular movie is the action, which I thought was really cool. We've seen a lot of similar scenes, but I thought they did such a good job. I was constantly thinking to myself as I was watching the movie, how did they film that? Like, I'm always interested in like production, special features and whatnot on Blu-rays. I'm always kind of intrigued by how they filmed it. And there was particular scenes in this movie like, how the fuck would they have ever filmed that? Especially the test footage where they're fighting in the car. That would have been such a tough scene to film. So I appreciated that. The bullets, that was cool at the beginning where he's counting out the bullets. Yeah. I thought that was a really cool scene. So, I mean, the action was just done phenomenally in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I liked the action a lot. I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but, you know, Deadpool's this character that has a wide variety of weapons he likes to use.
Yep.
And there's a point in the movie where he collects all the weapons he's going to use, and the joke is, like, he doesn't get to use them either time that he wants to. Like, he doesn't bring his guns or whatever. So, I know that wouldn't have been a lot of fun if he just showed up and shot everybody.
Yeah.
But I gave him a chance to use his katana swords a little bit more, but I would have liked to have seen him use more of a variety of weapons because that's kind of what the character's known for.
For sure. That was disappointing, yeah.
He never eats chimichanga either.
He mentions it, yeah.
But he never eats one, which is, that's not a deal breaker for me, but.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, so kind of just sum it all up. I like this movie a lot. I don't know if that necessarily came through on my review, as some of our reviews don't. But I just think that, like I said, in broad strokes, I think if it let moments just be what they were, I think I would have enjoyed and connected with this movie. But it's really, really funny. It is a cool action movie. I appreciate that Deadpool finally got his due. I think they made a solid movie. But that being said, it's certainly not a perfect movie.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Like, I was very pleased with this movie. I was not disappointed. I did have high hopes for it. There's some parts that I would have personally changed or hoped to have been different, but it wasn't a deal breaker for me. Like, I still really enjoyed this movie, and I could see this being a movie that I watch consistently from year to year, like a lot of other superhero movies that I love.
For sure. All right, so star rating.
This is a struggle for me because whenever I first got out of the movie, I was thinking 4.5, but I think that I've already lowered myself to a 4 with it.
Okay, wow. Yeah, I mean, 4.5 is a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, which is why I'm going 4.
Okay, so I'm gonna go 3.5.
Oh wow, I kind of figured you'd go 4.
Yeah, like I said, it lays it on pretty thick at certain times, and I think it thinks it's a little bit more clever than it actually was. But like I said, I really enjoyed the movie.
Well, I will say this about it. I think that this is the most faithful comic book movie that Fox has made, including all of the X-Men movies and, of course, Fantastic Four's bullshit. I think that this is the most faithful to the comic books that Fox has made, and I think part of it is they gave a lot of creative control to the writers and the director and Ryan Reynolds, as opposed to what they probably do with the X-Men and Fantastic Four movies.
For sure.
All right.
So our last segment, we just like to kind of close out the episode by asking a very geeky question, a very nerdy question. We like to ask what our favorite blank is, and we take turns. I believe it's Tyler's week, hopefully, because I didn't prepare anything.
Yes, it is my week, and I'm going to flip nerd favorite a little bit this week, which kind of goes against it being called nerd favorite, but this is honestly just a question I want to know the answer to for you. And so I'm going to use Nerd Favorite as a platform to ask it. So we talked about Amazing Fantasy 15 being auctioned off for a crazy amount of money. And it got me thinking about the holy grails for my comic book collection. So what comic
Sure.
I would really want to own. So I want to know what's your holy grail of comics that you would really want to have, but I do want to limit it to something that you could theoretically have one day.
Sure.
So it can't be like Amazing Fantasy 15 unless you hit the lottery.
Yeah.
So something that you could potentially add to your collection that is like the missing piece for you. So mine is a comic I've been after for quite a while. I don't think I'll pull the trigger on it anytime soon, which could be bad because the price could keep going up on it. But it's the first appearance of the Punisher in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 129.
That actually fluctuates a lot.
Yeah, it's not that crazy expensive. Like it's expensive, but it's something that I could potentially buy one day.
For sure.
I saw quite a few of them at the first PopCon we went to. There were a lot of comic book vendors that year, and it seems like every other booth had one for sale. And of course, there's a lot that goes into the price, whether it's certified or not, and what the rating is, and what condition it's in, and all that good stuff. I don't think that I'll ever be able to get like a 9.4 graded version of it, but I could get, I don't want to say a shitty copy, but you know, a more rundown copy of it for a few $100s. And that's something that I would definitely like to have hanging on my wall or within my collection. So that for me is the book I'm after.
All right, cool. If I'm keeping it in the realm of something that I could see myself buying one day, and it's a goal of mine to buy, I would have to go, and I know this is probably a boring answer, I would have to go with TMNT number 1.
Is that like the current IDW run? Or
No,
like the first ever?
Shit, I have a copy of that.
Okay, well that's what I thought was it. I'm like, well, you're not really swinging for the fences here.
No, the original.
Well, fuck, how much does that go for? I thought that was like insane.
No, I mean, I feel like we saw copies of that at PopCon too for like $600.
No fucking way.
Yeah,
like
look it up. Are you looking it up right now?
No, like first appearance ever of the Turtles?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, look it up. I swear to God, because we literally had the conversation, the same exact conversation.
First print, May 1984. Fuck. Well, here's one on eBay.
So how much is it going for on eBay?
Fourth print. You can't go.
Oh, you can't go off 4th print. I'm not going to fucking buy a 4th print.
There you go. Comicbookrealm.com.
Okay.
Just curious what this might be worth now. I couldn't find it when I looked at general price and sites. It's not as bad as I thought.
I think we saw it at PopCon for like $600.
Oh no.
But that wasn't graded.
So a 9.8, which is near mint,
Yep.
goes for $23,000.
That is insane.
But that's also
Graded.
like if any comic is graded, its value skyrockets. So I don't know how much it would be to get a non-graded version.
Like I said, we
estimated
saw it for
print-
$600 at PopCon.
So like the current value for this one is $4,000.
Okay.
So,
Which, again, still not.
I mean, that's not out of the
Yeah.
realm of possibility. Like if you were to, like somebody died and you came into money.
Yeah.
Sorry to get dark, but like, I don't know. I mean, it's not $325,000 for first experience of Spider-Man. So maybe if you could probably find a really shitty copy for like $600. I don't know.
I did. I saw one at PopCon. I feel like you're ignoring the fact that I keep saying that.
I'll be honest. I don't believe you, but
you were standing right next to me and we had this almost exact conversation.
I don't recall.
Okay.
But anyways, that's interesting.
Yeah. I know it's kind of a boring answer. If you listen to this podcast, you know that I'm just a huge fan. I have Donatello tattooed on me and all that good stuff. So obviously it's not the most exciting answer, but for me, TMNT is the first thing that I ever nerded out on. It's the reason that I'm on this podcast. Cause I'd like to think that I'd be a nerd either way, but it was the first thing that I really obsessed over, that I couldn't wait for each week. And I love the Turtles so much. And even though it's not a perfect cartoon by any means, I've tried to rewatch it several times as a grown up, and it's tough to watch a few of these episodes, but I love it so much just out of the fact that it brought me into the culture. And so I'd like to think that I would be a nerd either way, but I definitely don't think I would have the podcast or anything like that if it wasn't for the Turtles. So for me, this is kind of the holy grail for me. And it just so happens to also be something that I could eventually get for $4,000. Who knows? That might be chump change later. My stand-up career is taking off. I can feel it.
Sponsors are knocking on the door for this
Yeah,
podcast.
for sure.
No, they're not.
All right, so that'll do it for the latest episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast. You can like us on Facebook, check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and the new Twitch channel. We've been posting that recently. All of those are at the Nerds Podcast. Check out at our YouTube channel, the Nerds You're Looking For. Check us out on Google Plus as well. You can email us at the Nerds You're Looking For at gmail.com. Vote for us for Podcasts a Month at podcastland.com. A rate review on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any podcatcher you use, we're on it. I have another stand-up show that I don't want to officially announce what it is yet because there's definitely some details that have to be taken care of first, but.
Do you have to have sex on stage?
No, it's
worse than that.
It's an interesting show and I'm looking forward to it, but, I'll definitely have some more details to come, but if you live in the Evansville area, it's I think in early March, so be looking out for that. All right, for Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt.
We are the Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Later.